Hey, everybody, it's Dave here. I'm waiting on Darren. Don't know where he is yet. Try to get a hold of him. I wonder if he lost power up there in Yellowknife, but the show must go on. And today, we're going to be talking about things that are near and dear to my heart, the big round bellies in the interior of the offensive line. Now, the question will be, are they any good? Should we worry about them? Are they bad? Are they good enough? Are they going to be even better? We'll find out. It's going to be the difference between offensive and offensive when we talk about those guys. Next, but before that, I shouldn't say next. Before that, we're going to talk about what happened in Vikings land this week. And there's been a bunch of stuff that's gone on, and we'll go over that next on Two Old Bloggers. Let's rock! Vikings First and SKOL presents This Week in Vikings Land with Darren and Dave, your two old bloggers. Hey, everybody. Once again, it's me, Dave, and Darren hasn't showed up yet. I don't know what's going on. But will that stop the show? Of course it won't. It'll just have me do some adjustments, and I'll go solo today if necessary, because we can do that. But first, let me play with the screen real quick so we can get this going. Bada boom, bada bing. Let's see. Now, with that, let's start with theme one. This is going to be fun. All right. Let me get to where I need to go. And theme two, theme one. Theme one this week, we're starting with This Week in Vikings Land. And we're off to a roaring start. I appreciate your patience. And yes, Darren seems to be the purple ghost. Don't know where he is. Hopefully he can join us. It makes for a better show. But until then, let's go. There hasn't been much news out of Egan this week. We are in the dead zone, the time between the last OTAs and training camp, right? And this is the time of year that we worry about what news comes out is bad. But that isn't the case so far, knock on wood, that for the Vikings. So we'll go over a few things that Darren wanted to talk about. He made up this segment. Yes, Daniel, it's always a good time for whiskey. However, today I'm drinking an hazy IPA, which isn't real hazy, but it's that sort of hot summer day down here in Texas. And you need something refreshing. All right. Darren was worried last week about the wide receiver 3 concern, and he wanted to continue with that. This week, friend of the show, Kevin Seifert's ESPN wrote a piece about 5 things we know about the Vikings after minicamp. One of those 5 things that Seifert wrote was about the O'Connell offense and how they really want to see Darren's buddy, Jalen Nailor, step up to the plate. I think we all do. We want somebody to step up to the plate in that wide receiver 3 role. Hopefully it is Jalen Nailor. And Julian Powell could make a solid wide receiver 3 if Nailor can't stay healthy. I agree 100%. We're going to get into that. According to Seifert, it means we need to see Nailor on the field. Duh. That's a no-brainer. The Vikings have released wide receiver 3 from the last 2 seasons, Mr. KJ Ozzy Osbourne, off to New England. And they didn't pursue anybody in the draft that's worth a name. They didn't go high. So we'll find out how they plan on doing this. And here comes who they think will step up if he doesn't. Julian nailed it. It's most likely going to be Brandon Powell. But Kevin O'Connell had mentioned that he wants Jalen Nailor to step up. And we do. O'Connell said of Nailor, Jalen has always been the guy when he's healthy and on step, on the healthy and on the field. He shows up every single opportunity he's gotten. But him to take that next step, we're going to have to see him out there as part of the group. What was it, Mike Zimmer? You can't make the club if you're in the tub. I think that's the one. And guess who just showed up? I want to move this back over here and bring Mr. Darren Campbell in. Hey there, buddy. What's the word?
Sorry.
You just get up from a nap?
I was insisted. No, I was insisted I go on a family hike. They said, around 1:30. Oh, it's just a short way out. And then they didn't get out till 2 anyway.
You're coming in over your computer mic versus the sweet piece of technology next to you, by the way.
I don't know what's going on.
Okay. But you're out on a family hike, and everything was good and glorious. But we're glad you finally made it. As you can see, I've already started the show. We're talking about how Seifert pointed out that O'Connell wants Nailor to step up for the wide receiver 3 slot. We just given the quote of O'Connell, and I was about to get into the point in your notes where he's talking about we had a few glimpses of him last season, both in Green Bay and in Chicago, where he played pretty well. And and one of the reasons why they want him, there's his 2022, not 23, but 22 receiving stats, and you could see that there could be promise in this kid. So, do you want to continue from there?
I will. I assume that we you're sort of set the stage, not news to everybody, but like we let go our number 3 guy the previous 3 seasons in KJ Osbourne. He's with New England. We didn't address wide receiver in the draft at all. And my assumption had been that Brandon Powell is the favorite to win the job because that's who they put in there last year when Jefferson got out, but then they didn't have a whole lot of choices. But again, like it's O'Connell mentioned Nailor before anybody when he was asked about it. And he talked about how for him to take the next step, of course, we got to see him out there a lot. And that's the thing with Nailor, right, is that we've seen some glimpses. We saw it late in the season against Green Bay, like you said, and Chicago. Now the Chicago, that was garbage time, like the entire game for like we were playing the third stringers of Chicago at that point. But he was looking great in OTAs last year and in minicamp in 2023. And then he got hurt in training camp. I never did really see anything to say what the injury was. Maybe somebody else did, but it lingered into the season. He ended up only playing 6 games. And that's the problem he had staying on the field at Michigan State also, was that he missed 5 games as a freshman. He missed 9 as a sophomore, and then he missed 4 more as a senior. And in NFL.com's scouting report on him leading into the 2022 draft, an anonymous NFL scout was quoted saying that with Nailor, if he could stay healthy, you would have, but he's just not very durable. And and that's the thing. We saw it in university, at college, my Canadianness is showing through there, saying university. At college, again, he missed a lot, but he averaged over 17 yards a catch in three of his 4 seasons at Michigan State, Dave. So he was an explosive player there. But when you've had injuries hit in 3 of your 4 college seasons in East Lansing, and now 1 in your 2 seasons in the NFL, even if you're talented, if you can't stay on the field, NFL teams are quickly going to move on from you. And I think the Vikings might be at that point with Nailor right now. Keenan McCardell apparently pounded the table for this guy in 2022, really wanted him. I can see why he wanted him, because he is talented. He seems to have an ability to get open. He's got that big playability, but again, durability. And then I think the Vikings now are like, this is your last chance, Jalen. Show it now. If you can't stay on the field, well, then that's probably curtains for him. And then maybe at that point, but it still is the number 3. Who is it going to be? I think that the Vikings right now feel that they're going to go into it like, we're going to see what we have with what we've got. We feel good with Nailor and feel comfortable with Brandon Powell. But if kind of like the backup quarterback situation in 2022, if these guys cause some concerns for the Kevin O'Connell and the staff, then I think that then they're going to look at the late cuts after preseason for all the teams, and they might bring in a veteran then. The free agent market right now, the available wide receivers, it's basically a wasteland. There's nobody you'd really want to pick up. Laquan Treadwell. and Hunter Renfrow, we talked about that a couple of weeks ago too, was that there was a couple of articles saying where he would be a good fit for the Vikings, but there's been no indication the Vikings are interested in Hunter Renfrow, but he's still out there. But he's about the best of the free agent bunch right now, and he's not that good himself. So
yeah, and there's no indication that anybody's interested in Laquan either. So just so people know.
I didn't think there was any interest in him last year, but he eventually, what happens with these guys is that injuries, of course, pop up amongst teams, and then they get a veteran who they know has been around the block, who can be a pro, at least, maybe if they're not going to be that effective, and that you can fill out the room with them. And they end up, Laquan has kind of played that game for the past couple of seasons, actually, I think. But at the end of the season, there could be like a surprise cut from an NFL team at the wide receiver position where if they're not comfortable, Nailor's banged up again, and it looks like he's not going to be ready to go because of injuries, which is always the case. And they're like, Powell, really, we could do a little bit better then, and somebody shows up who's as good or better than those guys, then I think that they make the move. But right now, what we got is what we got. I said it before, I'll say it again right now. I would love to, I want to see Nailor take that number 3 spot. I think he's got more upside than Brandon Powell does. But again, he's just got to stay on the field in order to show that. He's going to get, if he's healthy in preseason, he's going to play a lot. But he's got to be healthy. And as we've outlined, he has not been able to do that at college or in the pros.
Mm-hmm. Now, everybody this week, Daniel's talk about bring back Adam Thielen. As much as we'd love to have Adam Thielen back, it's not going to happen right now. He's got a guaranteed salary. He's being paid wide receiver 1 money. He was wide receiver 1 on the Panthers last year. He's not coming back. He'd be a great wide receiver number 3, but it's not going to happen. Don't get your hopes up as much as we'd want it.
No, I didn't even mention, I forgot to mention that even in mandatory minicamp, Nailor did not appear in that because he had an illness. We don't know what the illness was, but again, here we go again. Mm-hmm. yeah, time to shine, and you're not even on the field. So I think, Drew, who I don't think is here this week, he said last week he was like, get rid of Nailor. He's a waste of time. And I understand that, but I'm not ready to give up on Jalen Nailor just yet, but I'm getting close. And I think the Vikings are as well.
Mm-hmm. No, Drew showed up. He came in and said hello. Well, hopefully that was when Nailor steps up, or anybody else steps up, is right before you came in, by the way. Hopefully somebody steps up to be a solid wide receiver 3. Now, are we going to use a wide receiver 3 a lot? Mm-hmm. That's going to be debatable because we may be more 2 tight end type of stuff. And we're going from there, 2 tight ends, 2 wide receivers, and Aaron Jones in the backfield. So we'll see how it goes. I'm not sure, but I'd love to see. He's got the size. He's got the speed. He's just fragile. And that there's nothing more disparaging to a fan, than to hope for somebody and, you barely touch them and then they're out. That's we wish that wasn't the case.
Aaron had a good joke there. He said Davenport is his roommate.
Could be. Yep. They have the same disease.
Must be contagious. Yes. I think somebody mentioned earlier about Hunter Renfrow doesn't block well. And that might be an issue with the Vikings. They don't have a whole lot of receivers who block well, but they certainly don't need to add another wide receiver who doesn't block well, I think. If you want to put the emphasis on the running game a bit more because your quarterback situation, you'd like to not have to lean on the pass as much with the quarterbacks we have, then you need wide receivers that can block. And I other than N'Keal Harry, who's now a tight end, I don't know who that would be with the Vikings wide receiver group. So
Kevin O'Connell he emphasizes blocking wide receivers, whether it's in the pass or the run game. Because as soon as the wide receiver catches the ball, you're now a blocker, unless you're the one that caught the ball. So that brings us to the next this week. How ESPN ranked the best rosters and where the Vikings fell into that ranking.
We're at the dead zone in NFL news right now before training camp starts, Dave. So all the outlets that cover the NFL, including ESPN, are going to be coming out with filler during that time. So you're going to see a lot of top 10, top 20, top 100 lists, the 10 best quarterbacks, the most dangerous receiver duos, the blah, blah, blah. And so, but this week, ESPN put out the top, ranked from 1 to 32, the strength of the NFL rosters in the NFL, which I thought was interesting. And they did it with Mike Clay, the guy you get up there, Seth Walder, and also Aaron Schatz, formerly of Football Outsiders and now of FSN, I think of Fantasy Sports, something. Mm-hmm. And so all of those guys are, at least 2 of them, I don't know Clay's backbone, but they're more of on the analytics side of things. That's how, they're the numbers crunchers. So they took that look at it with the rosters and caught my eye. I just was curious to see where the Vikings slotted in there. And the Vikings didn't slot in very well, according to these guys. 23rd in the NFL, as the 23rd strongest roster, which isn't very strong at all. And when you compare that with how our other NFC North rivals did, well, Detroit was ranked the 5th strongest roster. The Green Bay Packers, that team from Wisconsin.
Understandable.
Yes, yeah. Green Bay Packers, that team from Wisconsin, they were ranked 13th. And then even the Bears got into 17th. So everybody else in the NFC North had these guys considered as a stronger roster than the Minnesota Vikings. And that, I think, that's the theme that we've seen in the offseason, I think, where everybody who covers the NFL are really downgrading the Vikings, not expecting very much of them, which in some ways is understandable. But when you look at, offensively, you got Justin Jefferson, you got Jordan Addison, they've added Aaron Jones. You're eventually going to get TJ Hawkinson back. He'll be out for a little while, but we know he's going to be back. And at that point, you've got one of the best pass catching tight ends in the NFL there. You've got, we talked about it before, you got Brian O'Neill and Christian Darrisaw as your tackles, your bookend tackles. Defensively, the defense was overall pretty solid last year. They did have a slump at the end of the year, faltered when we didn't need them. We didn't want them to falter, but that happened in the last 3 games. But overall, the defense was much better than it had been the previous 3 seasons under Zimmer and Kevin O'Connell. And they strengthened that unit this year by making the signings they did with Jonathan Grenard, Van Ginkel, Blake Cashman, Shaq Griffin, I think will be a positive. And again, you drafted Dallas Turner 17th overall. We think he's going to be a big help. Hopefully Kyrie Jackson is going to be a big help in the 4th round. But that defense should be better than it was last year. And it was pretty solid last year for the most part. So where is does that feel like a 23rd ranked roster to you in the NFL? Like Seattle's ahead of us. The Bears are ahead of us, according to this group. I think really we're being downgraded. And this is where I guess it gets understandable. It's the quarterback situation is where I think we're being downgraded the most. These guys just don't believe that either Sam Darnold, the reclamation project, or JJ McCarthy, your rookie, are going to play well enough for the Vikings to be ranked better than 23rd. But I think so. This is a big thumbs down on the Vikings quarterback situation right now by these gentlemen. And that's why we're ranked 23rd. And that's why we're ranked where we're ranked, even though I think that if you look overall in the roster, it feels like it should be somewhat higher than that. And we may prove to be the case once the regular season gets rolling. But Dave, I don't know if you think that this is all a bunch of hooey at 23rd or whether you feel it's understandable.
I'm all for it. Let them set the expectations that the Vikings are bad. I hope every other team sees this public, pronouncement across, not just ESPN, but a whole bunch of others. The Vikings are going to finish down on the bottom. The Vikings aren't going to win 4 games. The Vikings go right ahead. Take that. So when we face you, you'll be like, we're playing the Vikings. Chalk that one up for a win. Go ahead. Do that. I encourage you to. Because I think it's bullshit. And if they look, I think our defense got better, and we had one that ranked 11th or 9th, depending on what stats you're looking at last year. If it gets better, hey, that puts you close to 500. I think the offense is as good, if not better. Now, yes, TJ Hawkinson isn't going to be there for the first half of the season or so. Understand that. But that's where other wide receiver 3 types need to step up, as we talked about Jalen Nailor before, or Robert Tonyan needs to step up, or Oliver, or whoever else is going to be playing tight end. Johnny Munt, the best third tight end 3 in the league. All those guys will need to step up. But do I believe they can? Oh, hell yes. Do I believe, and we'll get into the offensive line here in the second half of this, that even they can play better? Oh, yes, I do. But, and with that, being down there, they're ranked the 23rd, they're ranked this, that's bullshit. And that's fine. I hope the rest of the league thinks that. I think Vikings fans are smart enough to know better.
I like how you think, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
Optimism.
Yes.
We can use some of it.
And here we go. The 7 players. You want to talk about players that were selected in the draft and who haven't signed their contracts yet. One of them's up there.
He is, yes. Again, the Vikings drafted seven players in April 2024 draft. They in May at different times, but in May they got 5 of them signed so far. So Rijkaard, Jurgens, Rodriguez, Kyrie Jackson, and Walter Rouse have all signed their contracts for very little.
That's normal.
as per their slots. So, but 2 have not signed, and those are the 2 most important guys from that draft, and that is our number 10th overall pick, JJ McCarthy, the quarterback of the future, and at number 17, edge rusher Dallas Turner. And that's something where I think that if you look at the past years, if you look at the first round picks right now, Caleb Williams is the only guy picked in the top 10 who hasn't been signed yet besides McCarthy. And then after that, the only first rounders unsigned in the whole first round are Turner and offensive tackle Amarius Mims. So outside of them, everyone else picked from 11 to 32 has been assigned their rookie contract. And then, which it was something that piqued my interest, because in the previous 2 years of Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, when he was as Minnesota's GMs, our first round selections, Lewis Cine in 2022, and then Jordan Addison last year, had been signed by May. And now we're about to hit July tomorrow, and McCarthy and Turner still haven't signed. So is it time to start freaking out? Like, are we going to have a holdout here? I don't think so, because, of course, since the rookie contract scale has gone in, holdouts have become basically a thing of the past. The Bryant McKinney days, where holding out multiple times in the regular season, you just don't see it anymore, because there's no haggling over contracts, because everybody knows where they slot in. Now, we talked about it. This First and SKOL has talked about how there's some talk about how the bonus thing might be an issue with JJ McCarthy, and then he wants to get all of his bonus in this first year
up front.
Maybe that's up front. Maybe that's trickled down to Dallas Turner as well. He's saying, well, JJ McCarthy wants to get it, I want it too. We don't know about that, but I think that, again, with the slots being what they are, it isn't time to freak out. Training camp starts July 27th. 27th. Mm-hmm. That's 28 days from now, basically. Plenty of time to get these guys signed, and these two are too important to the Vikings' fortunes in 2024 and beyond for Rob Brzezinski, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, and the Vikings front office to not get this nailed, so that they're there day one in training camp when they need to be. So I think it's a bit of an anomaly, a weird thing that's happened this year. We didn't get them signed in May, but I expect in the next week or two, certainly in the next week, 2 or 3, you're going to be seeing that they get inked, and that they'll be there in training camp and working, getting their reps in just like everybody else and just like we want them to.
Yeah, and I have no doubt about that. I don't think this is going to develop into training camp. Whatever the issues are, we'll find out, but I think they're going to get it.
Give it 2 weeks. And I think that's about right.
When everybody gets back from vacation and everybody's on vacation right now. Once they get back, it's going to be first thing on their desks. Hey, let's get these guys signed. And somebody's going to turn around and go, make it happen. And it will happen.
It will. The only, because we don't have the issue the Bears probably have with Caleb Williams, where he's looking for ownership. I'm joking.
Well, he can't get that, but that's what he wanted. He's very much, his family especially is very much wanting a bigger chunk of the pie than there can be. So, but we'll find out. It should be interesting. Well, that brings us to the end of theme 1. And of course, what follows theme 1? Well, let's do a little music, because we're going to have a little break. This is where I'll cut the show, and you'll hear from our sponsors if you're listening on the podcast version. If not, you've got us right now. And let's go to theme 2. As I cut that, I got to work the slider. It sounds better, but we'll see. Theme 2 and our last theme. This is the one everybody tuned in for. This is the one I absolutely love. Are we getting better on the interior? It's a good question. I posed it. Are you worried about the interior? What was it last week, Darren? You were worried about the defensive line, the interior defensive line. This week, I'm worried about the interior offensive line. Are we getting better? Those are probably the 2 weakest points on the roster, acknowledged. I just saw a report come out like 20 minutes before the show that the defensive interior line ranks like 30th. So, fine. Let people think that. Hopefully they're better than that. But we'll find out when it comes to offensive line. And I did a whole bunch of research this week, and Darren got in his deep thought mode, and I was doing a deep dive into the numbers. You're going to see some of them. And we came up with this. Are they good? Is there anything surprising? We're going to find out. Now, the time period we're going after to discuss all guards and centers is what I call the PFF era. PFF started grading linemen in 2006. And so we have data from that. Now, everybody, Dave, PFF doesn't know what they're doing. There's no way to grade an offensive lineman. They're full of shit, even though at least 5 sets of eyes look at it and they're doing wins, loss, and how they do it. But when it comes up in total at the end, it generally is pretty close to actually how the player played, whether they know what the play assignment was or not. Was the guard supposed to pull and then seal the inside as he rounded around the tackle or the tight end? But he didn't, and he took the crashing corner. Well, they're gonna grade it. Did he block the corner? Did he block the guy he was trying to block? As a positive or a negative. They didn't know the deal. Now, of course, the coaches do, and they do their own grading, and they're going to say, you screwed that up. But luckily, in this case this season, Aaron Jones busted through, and we got 12 yards on the run, and everything's all grand and glorious. But there's really no individual tracking other than PFF. Now, ESPN is starting to do some individual tracking. They have metric called run block win rate and pass block win rate. I'm trying to get access to try to figure out how I can get those numbers during the season. And Arif Hassan has taken those numbers and these numbers and meshed it together and done his wonderful weighing about stuff to figure out how good these are. But for this purpose of this show, I'm going to use PFF because it's the only thing I have available to me at my fingertips. Now to go to spreadsheets. And I know people don't like spreadsheets, but I hope to make them as entertaining and as enlightening as possible. I'm going to switch scenes real quick. And here we are. And we're going to start off with, in this case, the guards. And I go back all the way to 2006 when they started keeping stats. And you can see when it comes to preseason snaps, they didn't start till 2013. And I'll tell you why I put the preseason numbers in there in just a minute. In the center column there under the purple where it says regular season starters, offensive grade, run blocking grade, pass blocking grade. What I did is I took everybody when it came to starters that played at least 500 snaps. So it's a little bit above 20% of all the snaps of the positions. It's closer to about a third. There were 1,700 and some odd snaps last year per offensive lineman. So I took 500 and went from there. Yes, Northfield, Arif is great at converting the numbers. Hopefully I'll do, half as good a job as he will. But I took those numbers and I placed them in here. And this is what you're seeing right now. They're the rookie classes.
Laughing at
yes, Daniel. Yeah, we're being PowerPointed to death, but hopefully it looks better in the PowerPoint slide. What I took is the rookie classes. And you could see 23 down to 2006. How many players actually have played above the mean score? Mean being the middle score of those 32 of the 64 starters when it comes to guards, 32 when it comes to center. And that's where those scores come up, the 62.67, the 62.16, and the 61.69. As you can see, the guards are relatively close. You will not see that when it comes to the centers. And we get the numbers. How many players started as rookies? That's that dark navy blue column. and it's 6, 7, 6, 5, 7. So it's around there. There was 2017 was a horrible year. None started. And then we get down to 15 and 14, where it's 7 and 9. And those were great years for guards. And as you can see, I've listed all the guards that played above the minimum, not the minimum, but the median level of play, i.e. they're good. They're on the good side. They're in the top 32 at their position. And as you look at that, you can go down. And like I said, 2014 was just kick-ass. 2015 followed up, well represented. But you can see for 2023, 22, 21, there's nothing. None of them had all three categories above the minimum. Nothing. Nobody. And it's sort of scary. There's a big drought. I've talked about how people aren't coming out of college prepared. Well, this shows this. That's just on their rookie year. So I just wanted to explain how the chart went. Now, to the next one. You always hear me say it takes 3 to 4 years generally for an offensive lineman to develop. So I take the same numbers over 4-year total, and I look at them to see if they grow. Now, in this one, you can see that even though 6 people started last year as a rookie, I have no data because they're only going into their second year. But let's go down to where we have data. 2020, and there's a 0 there in the rookie training snaps. And why I went with rookies taking snaps in the preseason is because you can't get data on who was drafted. Pro Football Reference very rarely lists anybody anymore as a center, a guard, or a tackle. They're generally listed as OL. And so I wanted something a little bit more accurate, and you can see in each year, there was 46 in 2023, 48 in 2022. We have 35 in 2021, which is low. You see 0 in 2020. Well, that's because there was no preseason in 2020. 2020 was a COVID year. And then it's 45, 44, 40, 52, 50, 54, 55 down to 2013. And like I said, that's when they started doing preseason stuff. But the numbers have gone down from 56 all the way down to 35 in one case of actually how many guards are being drafted, players are being drafted to play guard that make it to the preseason. And then how many develop from there. Now, if you get to year 2, you see almost the numbers of players that start almost double. Same players, it's just now they're in a year 2. But the numbers almost double. Then you get into year 3, and there's generally even more that are playing. And in year 3, you see that the numbers for being better than average have gone up. They go up in year 2, and they really go up in year 3. And then in year 4, everything stays about the same. It goes up in a couple, and it comes down in a couple. And what causes it to come down could be anything from injuries to schedule to all sorts of stuff. But we will find out as they develop that the sweet spot, if they're not taking in that, early successful that first year, usually comes in year 3. And I think we have a player going into this third year that plays right guard.
We do.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to
wonder who that is.
I know. We'll get to it. But anyways, I found these numbers fascinating, and I just wanted to share them with you. I wish I could make them more entertaining, but I didn't. Well, that's the guards. Let's go to the centers. Centers, 32 starters, right? So starter 15 and above is basically you're good. 16 and below, you're bad. When it comes to mean scores, this is where we find a big difference. Overall, the average mean, i.e. middle of the starters, is 65.09. And this gets weighted. These numbers are up high because of the real good ones. It would actually be on both guard and the centers a little bit lower than that if you just went to the where's my halfway point and looked at the numbers across. When it comes to run blocking, they're a lot better than the guards. They're sitting there at 68.22, which is cool. We want good run blockers. We should always want good run blockers. Aaron Jones is going to want a good run blocker. But then when we get to the pass blocking, and it's below 60 for the average, it's 58.60. Now, we get into the same deal we had with the guards. There's only so many that are drafted, and you can see the numbers that took snaps during the preseason. They range from 20 to 13. And then actually how many started. And you can look at those numbers and go across and see how many were good across the board. And the ones that are good across the board, I have listed in the right-hand column, and you see those names, and those are some good names of some centers. And a lot of these, going all the way back to 2006, a lot of these guys are starting to age out. But you can see this. Now, here again, on the guard side, 2016 or 2014 was a hell of a year. Same on the center side. God, it was great. And then 2016 was also good for them. We hopefully, when we draft a center next, if we do, that'll be a great year. And ours will be that way. But we'll find out. So, and again, to show how they progress through 4 years, here are your numbers. And as you can see, from going from year 1 to year 2, they increase. They don't almost double, but they increase. Some places they do double or go better. Year 3, there's even more of them. Year 3 is where you see the bigger jumps and the numbers that are very, very good. And then in year 4, for some reason, some of them drop off, but some of them go up. And again, that's a slew of reasons that could cause that. Or the team has said, hey, you're not good enough, so we're going to take you off for whatever reason. So those are the numbers on the big screen of what we looked at. I thought they were fascinating just to see. They're a lot less than I thought they would be in some cases. I figured there would be some rookies that did better than turns out they actually did. And I thought year 3, even though year 3 is the big one, I thought those numbers may be even bigger, but it didn't quite turn out that way. Now, I've gone here, I've looked at free agents available for, in this case, centers and guards using OTCs over the caps data, and you can see them here. And I said, if we want a free agent, we want to be right around that mean line, which is actually above where I have it marked here. It'd be, Nick Harris at center-ish, somewhere in there, James Daniels at right guard on up. And you can see there's only one left guard in that spot. And his pass blocking sucks. His pass blocking is bad. It's almost to the level, or Dalton Reiser's almost to that level as well. But you can see who's available. Now, of this list, there's a bunch that I would love to have. Hey, give me Drew Dalman out of Atlanta if he's willing to come. Creed Humphrey out of the Chiefs. But this is who's scheduled to be a free agent next year. And as we all know, a lot of those teams are going to lock them up.
Yeah.
I would love for Kansas City and Creed Humphrey to say, nah, we can't afford to pay you because we've only got $13 million in cap available next year. But we'll find out. And generally, that wouldn't stop me because you just make next year, you extend them and you make next year's cap hit cap hit low. But it all depends.
But they've got 2 guys on there who are scheduled to be free agents. Can they pay both of them, both Trey Smith or Creed Humphrey, the kind of scratch that those guys want? I would gladly take either one of those guys on the Vikings O-line. Like, I don't like, I'm good with either one.
And they would both be fantastic.
It would be fantastic, and of course a lot of other teams would too. But I don't think the Chiefs can afford both of them. That's the thing. So whether it's Creed Humphrey you end up getting, and I think actually the Chiefs might prioritize him more than Smith because he's the guy snapping the ball to Mr. Pat Mahomes.
Right. And so, as you can see, these are all the under 30 guys. There are free agents going to be available that are above 30. I didn't want those because if we're opening up a Super Bowl window, you want the younger guys so that window stays open longer, not just a 1 or 2 year rental of some old guy. There is benefit in that if it gets to that, but I prefer the longer term, and that's why I picked the under 30 guys. Now, when it comes to big boards already for the 2025 draft, went over to PFF, and these are their top players in each position so far that they've got rated. And they're interesting. All the teams except for Illinois and Virginia are some sort of red, but West Virginia. But there's some names you want to keep, and why that says Jonah up there, I mistyped that somewhere. You want to keep, it's the center from Arizona that you want there. You want to keep an eye on these guys as the college season goes through because they're the ones that are going to be hyped up. Now, when it comes to centers, you have Tyler Forness saying you've got to find the center in the top 64 picks, and then guards you can find a little bit lower, but you want centers in the top 64 is the trend of finding them where they're good. And we all know that there are exceptions to everything, and you can find a good center in the 7th round if you're lucky. That turns out to be a Hall of Famer type deal. But that is not usual. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention as future people we're going to watch. Now back to this. Now that we're done with the slides, scroll down in my notes to find where we are. All right. We talked about Creed Humphrey. Hit the right button, David. Being, I would love next year. You can see he's got a big round belly. Would absolutely love to see it. You also have Eric McCoy of the Saints as a possible. And I've already skipped where I want to go, but okay. Those are the 2 possible centers of a few that we'd go for. I talked about Dahlman earlier. We're going to get to our guys. We have, from last year, we have Blake Brandel. Keep in mind those average scores, those mean scores. I want to bring up reference document for that. So I can look at it. The mean scores for guards, we want to get the low end of the top 64 is a 51.7 for offense. Brandel beat that. The high end for it is 87.6. Those are the guys that would be exciting to have. So that's your range on the offensive scores. On the run blocking scores, the low end is 50.8. Brandel beats that, but he's closer to that low end. And high end is 87.6. And when it comes to pass blocking, the low end is 49.3. Top 64 guys, starters. Thank you, camera. Top 64, the low end is 49.3, like I said, and the high end is 84.5. zoom out further. There it goes.
There we go.
Gary, oh, that sounds horrible. Been there, done that, though. All right, so we'll keep those numbers in mind as we go through our guys. Here's Dalton Risner. He's above minimums. We want at least above minimums. We'd love above average, and we just went through that in the charts, what the averages were. Garrett Bradbury, 60.9, 65.5, and 56.8 in pass blocking. So he's right below the minimum on pass blocking. He's below the average on run blocking, and he's below the average overall. That's Garrett Bradbury from last season. We go to Ed Ingram. Ed Ingram's a little bit better. He's 59.5, 60.9, and 59.1. He's closer to those means, that being the middle. He's in that range. He's not above that halfway point, but he's closer than anybody else that we've got. But you take all three of those guys, and they're still in that bottom half of starters, with the best one being Ed Ingram. And for those that are screaming Dalton Risner, Dalton, 57.1 overall, below average. 67.4 on pass blocking, which is way higher than average. He ranks 22nd of guards that took 20% of the snaps last year as starters. And then he's at 50.0 when it comes to run blocking, which is horrible. It is the bottom. That's the problem with Dalton Risner, as we all know. Now, they have Chris Cooper as their coach. There's a lot of things that influence how offensive lines develop and how they play. You have quarterback play. Quarterback's very important. You have scheme. What sort of scheme are they running? What sort of plays are they calling? Is it a wide zone, mid zone? Is it power? All that sort of stuff affects how these guys play and how they're graded. There's also off-season training. Are they beefing up, right? Getting stronger? Are they learning, improving their martial arts? And by martial arts, I mean their hand play. How to counter. Are they getting faster at that? And for some, it is taking martial arts, some sort of martial arts. Are they, there's footwork as well. Are they improving their footwork? Back in the day, you would see offensive linemen going to ballet class. And it was all to work on footwork and different stuff and other dance classes, but it's all about footwork. And all that stuff can be improved in the off season as they work through it. The coach has them during the season. All this could be done on the off season through trainers and through ability to improve how they actually play. And we're going to see if that happens. Gary, okay. Making a fish pizza. Interesting. I like anchovies, but I don't think that's what Gary's talking about. Other free agents next year, we have Quinn Merners. I probably killed that pronunciation, from the Broncos. He's a top-rated option. He is very good. Scores in the 80s, low to high 80s. Very good. He's a great run blocker. Love to have him. We talked about Drew Dolman from Atlanta. He's going to be available. I wonder how he's going to get along with Kirk Cousins, but we'll find out. Of course, you have Creed Humphrey, who's absolutely outstanding. He's Creed Humphrey out of the bunch is probably the most even across the board when it comes to his grades. Just good at everything. We have Then we get into the guys from college. This is Jonah Savaiini, something or other, from Arizona. Savaiinaea.
It's Polynesian.
Okay, very well could be. He's one of the top-ranked prospects. We have Tyler Booker from Alabama as also one of the top-ranked ones, and Tate Ratledge from Georgia as another top-ranked prospect that we could all see. Now.
For now.
Much
will change.
Yeah. And then they'll get the hype. But Drew, I'm sure, is tracking all these names, and he's ready to watch and grade them up for next year. Because Drew does a great job on his big board. He is always up there in the 80-plus percentile range of hitting. And there's even pros that aren't that good. So we appreciate that from Drew. But so far, out of all of that, Darren, what's your take? What did you find surprising? And you got a sneak peek at the graphs before anybody else did.
What wasn't surprising was that there are no Viking interior players that we are slated to start who were in the top or on any of those charts, which is not really encouraging, but not surprising based on we've considered the Vikings interior to be the weakness for the past 2 or 3 years in the offensive line, and it continues to be. I think what was interesting and depressing was 2014, 2015. Those really seem to be like the high water mark for like getting like really good rookie talent at the guard position and the center position coming into the NFL. And after that, it has not been very good. And so I don't know what happened there. Like, was that just like a great amount of talent that just happened to come at that point? And a lot of those guys are still in the NFL now and still starters and above still average starters. Yeah, still and the Vikings didn't get in on any of those guys at that time. But it really just shows how if you draft a rookie offensive guard or a center, you cannot expect them to be really strong players. Even if you start them, they are going to struggle badly for the most part. We're
how bad was it? 0, 1, 2.
How bad is it? How bad was the Vikings situation at right guard that they decided that Ed Ingram was the guy that was the best of the bunch in 2022? And he ended up being the worst of the bunch as far as a starting NFL guard at NFL right guard. Thankfully, he improved.
If you look at the top 64, he is not the worst. He ranked 38th, I think it was.
Not in his rookie year, though.
Not his rookie. No, his rookie year is horrible.
Yeah, and that's what I mean.
Yeah,
like for the Vikings to think that make the call that Ed Ingram is going to be our starter. He's the best we've got in 2022. We could not have had much.
Interesting, Gary. You need to do a cookbook, my friend.
So that's those are the things that it kind of lends credence to what you talk about all the time, Dave, about how at the college game they don't seem to be training these pups to play at a level. They're training. It makes sense. They're training them to be effective at the college level. That's what college coaches are paid for, of course. But they're not training them to once they get beyond college to have the skills to succeed once they get into the big show, the NFL. That just seems like they almost need to be in the minor leagues like you'd have with baseball or hockey, and like get seasoning for 1 or 2 or 3 years before they get to the big stage and play at the NFL level and can actually function at an average level. So I don't know what it is the spread offenses. I don't know why they're so horrible at developing college interior linemen these days, but they do not do a very good job of it at the college level because since 2015, the interior guys, just as rookies, are not succeeding in the NFL. Very few are starting, and the ones that do, sometimes that doesn't really go very well, like Ed Ingram. And you talk about the
Garrett Bradbury was horrible when he started.
Yeah, and we started him, and you've got like you talk about the 3 or 4 year rule with the offensive lineman. Like you're showing those stats where it shows the third year is really where, if they're going to be any good, it starts to show up then more often than not. And so that does give us some hope for Ed Ingram. He got much better now, much better from being horrible to what he was in year 2.
Close to average.
Still isn't great, but it does give you some hope that year 3 will be the year that Ed Ingram turns into the player that turns into the player the scouting report said he would be, which would be a solid NFL starter. That is what the scouting reports on him coming out of LSU. That's what they almost unanimously said he would be. He wouldn't be an all-pro or anything like that. He would be a solid NFL starter. And for the Vikings on the interior, they would love to have 3 solid NFL starters on the interior, because we have not had that. Well, I can't since Joe Berger was playing it inside for us. Really,
it's been a while. It's been a while, and I don't. It was surprising to me when I saw the actual numbers put it together. I do think Ed Ingram's going to take that step this year, and he will be above average. That he will fall, but he will be a solid starter. I don't think he's going to be a Pro Bowler. Would love for that to happen, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I'm just hoping that Blake Brandel, once he's settled into this position, practices it all off season, that he sits there and bumps into that category. And the best year of Bradbury was 2 years ago, 2022. Hopefully we return to that Garrett Bradbury versus last year's Garrett Bradbury, and then he steps up. Otherwise, I think he's going to be the first to go of the bunch when we're looking at next year. When we're looking at the draft or looking at free agents, we're going to look at centers as well as interior defensive linemen. Everybody knows that's going to be high on the target, probably corners. But of those, I think Ed's got the best chance. I think Ed's going to do it. He's, like I said, the big jump seems to be from the data, year 3. And I'm going to count him in. We need him to. So.
Yes.
We need him to. So.
We do.
But that's the show today, folks. I hope you enjoyed it, this deep dive. We don't do them that often, and I know the slides or the slideshow type format and the spreadsheets is hard. But any last words there, Darren?
A couple. Happy Canada Day. Canada Day is tomorrow, July the 1st. Happy July the 4th on Thursday. So our nations were born on those 2 days, Canada and the U.S. I mean, Jonathan isn't here. He's from Brazil.
Okay.
And I think their national day is in July as well. But anyway, happy July the 4th for the American viewers out there, which are
Day.
Yeah, as well. So just that. And one thing to look for, maybe not next week, is I'm going to, one of these, I don't know if it'd be a deep dive, but we talked about last week and the week before about how the quarterback situation, JJ McCarthy, and how sitting a year would be potentially the best outcome, and it would really do him well. So I'm going to be looking into, I don't know how long it's going to take, but I'm looking into instances in the last 20 years. I might stretch it 25 on quarterbacks, rookie quarterbacks who did sit a year or more, and looking at how they produced when they actually got to start after sitting a year or more, and see if there's anything that shows up there that say that those on average turned out better than the rookies that got thrown into the fire right away. So watch for that here in the next few weeks. I don't know how long it'll take me to crunch the numbers, but I'm going to be working on that. and see what turns up, because it's a question that I've been thinking about for a couple of weeks, several days now. Is something that we talk about, how it's not a good idea to start a rookie right away a lot of times, and they would benefit from a little bit of seasoning. And we've seen that team from Wisconsin, that has worked really well for them. Looks like potentially twice now. So is that just a fluke?
3 times if you want to take Favre got seasoned down in Atlanta before he went up to Green Bay.
That's true. So yeah, just something to look forward to, and or look for that in the next couple of weeks as I crunch the numbers, and hopefully we'll see you back next Sunday.
Mm-hmm. And until then, like Darren said, we have Canada Day. Celebrate with Canadians up there. I loved it when I was deployed. We had Canadian units with us, and they would any excuse to party, and that was one of them. That we had a blast. And then, of course, 4th of July, Independence Day here in the States. Please come back with all your digits. You don't want to blow them off. And have a great week. What do we say, buddy?
We say SKOL Vikings, baby, and thanks for watching.
Yeah, SKOL Vikings.
Like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and rate us on your favorite podcast aggregator. Darren and Dave, thank you for watching this episode of Two Old Bloggers. We look forward to seeing you on every show on the new Vikings First and SKOL. You can find our podcasts as part of the Fans First Sports Network. Sports takes for the fan, from the fan. SKOL, everybody!